they can vasodilate depending on what you're doing. For instance, this morning, the blood vessels in your brain were vasodilating because you were trying to figure all this stuff out. And the brain's like, I need more resources. I need more oxygen, coffee, cocaine, whatever you got. So anyway, and the sympathetic nervous system was, so my friends have told me. The sympathetic nervous system is responsible for that too. Both those systems are both always on. But one will tend to dominate. So it's working away right now, doing things like, if you're a little hot, it'll make you sweat. If you're not, it'll stop you from sweating, things like that. But yeah, the big thing that it's known for is fight or flight. Now you'll notice I don't have the parasympathetic system anywhere on here. So where the heck is that? Parasympathetic does not run through the spinal nerves. It runs through the cranial nerves and the sacral nerves. So it doesn't end up in this situation, so we don't have to worry about it right now. But yeah, that's the last link in the chain there. So preganglionic is going over to postganglionic, and postganglionic is going out to effector. Now there's a small mistake in the notes while I'm here. Now in my notes it's on page 38, but I don't know where. If you go into your section on spinal nerves, which is our next section, where they go into this, Chapter 3, spinal nerves. There's section 2 is spinal nerve roots, and section 3 is the plexuses, introduction to plexuses, but it's saying that the rami lie distal to the spinal nerves. It's not really distal, they're lateral to it, because distal means further away from the, I don't know. So it's a small mistake, but don't get confused. So obviously, all of these rami are lateral to the spinal cord, and the white one is lateral to the gray one. The gray one is medial to the white one, because you got to know the order of these things. So the white one is further away, right? And that's why it does this weird loop-the-loop, which nobody really knows.
You said section 3.
In chapter 3, section 3, under
3,
plexuses and terminal nerves, it's saying the rami lie distal to the spinal nerves, and that's not really correct. They are lateral to the spinal nerves. They keep saying they're going to fix it.
Spinal nerves, spinal reflexes, spinal cord.
Spinal
Spinal
cord.
cord.
Spinal cord.
It's the fifth page.
In section 1.
5th page.
Thanks. Where's the
I think.
I'll check some notes.
That's really hard to say that one's for now without words. You know which one?
Oh, my bad. Spinal nerves.
No, you good.
Spinal nerves, fourth page.
4th page. Okay.
Where it says plexus and terminal nerves, it's rami lie distal.
The interweaving of
Rami
brain.
lie distal. They're not distal.
They're
They're
not distal.
lateral.
They're lateral.
Right? Right? Right?
Lateral.
Okay.
Got it. Okay.
Is that your thinking face?
No,
He had a moment.
Oh, he's looking at my daughter's picture.
next to the
My minion.
minion. I've got 2 minions. But oddly, I serve minions. It's supposed to be the other way around. Okay, so what do we got? Spinal nerves are the next thing that we're going to talk about in detail, and of course this is a picture that we've already gone to a lot. Now you remember in the muscles, the structure of the muscles, each neuron is each muscle cell is individually wrapped in endomysium, and then a bunch of these is a fascicle, which is wrapped in perimysium, and then the whole thing is wrapped in epimysium, and that makes the muscles. Fortunately, the neurons are going to work the same way. So, each nerve fiber Because remember, a nerve cell can also be called a nerve fiber. Each fiber is wrapped in endoneurium. Endoneurium, endo meaning inside. And that's going to be this little guy right here. So, endoneurium. And then a bunch of fibers are known as a fascicle. And a fascicle is wrapped in perineurium. And then the whole nerve is wrapped in epineurium. Which makes sense. Endo means inside, peri means around, and epi means the outermost part. And you see there's fat in there, and there are blood vessels and all kinds of other things to take care of this stuff. And actually, this connective tissue, this three-layered connective tissue, should remind you of the meninges, because they are actually extensions of the meninges. So the piamata, the one that's actually adhering to the cord, that continues out and becomes the endoneurium. And the arachnoid membrane continues out and becomes the perineurium, and the duramata continues out and becomes the epineurium. And this is usually a good thing unless something goes wrong, and this can cause constriction. For instance, if you have problems with your discs and you start to get what we call fibrosis, when the body has an injury that it can't fix, it just keeps throwing resources at it, and so you have a lot of fibroblasts. And you know what the best thing is? We're going to protect it. We're just going to build a lot of fibrous material around it, but that sticks everything together. And then this stuff starts to, basically it's like having scar tissue around this thing, and scar tissue tends to contract over time, and that can cause pulls, and then the nerves start to hurt, or you start to have like numbness and tingling going down the leg because it's just not working right. So anyway, and of course, if you got a disc problem or a car crash over here, yeah, car crash is a big one because you've got all of these nerves coming out of the intervertebral foramen right here. Of course, it gets whipped all around in a car crash, and the discs get blown out, and then the muscles get really tight to hold everything in place, and that puts pressure on the discs. And that, see, the nerves, when they're coming out of here, when you're healthy and everything is going good, they've got 80% clearance. The hole is 5 times bigger than the spinal nerve going through it, so that should be great. But then as you get older, your discs flatten out. So one vertebra is coming down on top of the other vertebra, so your hole is kind of like started like this, and it's getting to be like this. And then if you've got fascial restrictions as well, this is where you start to have problems. Something to look forward to. Now, as the spinal nerves come out, some of them just go straight out and they don't mix with other nerves. For instance, the thoracic nerves over here, each one of them just comes straight out, but then a lot of them are going to engage in these plexuses. So we got to learn the plexuses and the terminal nerves that come out of them. So anybody questions on all of this stuff before we move on?
Real quickly, not that stuff.
Not that stuff, something else.
That's, yeah, you, can you break this down again? You said for the matters, that's dual matter when it's endo. Acro.
The endoneurium is an extension of the piamata.
Okay.
The perineurium is an extension of the arachnoid. And the epi is an extension of the duramata. It's the same as the order inside the column, the inner to the outer. Yeah. Fortunately. Okay. So how many spinal nerves are there? 62, very good. 31 pairs, right? So you have 8 pairs cervical, and they are numbered C1 to C8. They are these guys right up here, which is, you know, kind of convenient. They just number them one after the other. So thank God they're not named. And then there are 12 pairs of thoracic spinal nerves. And they're going to be numbered, guess what? T1 to T12. There are 5 pairs of lumbar spinal nerves, L1 to L5.
When I say 7 to 8,
Mm-hmm.
there's no C8.
You mean C7?
Huh?
Do you mean C7?
Very good. No, I don't mean C7, it's C8, and there is a problem there. How many cervical vertebrae do you have?
7.
7. How many does a cat have?
Go with this meow again.
Meow. 8.
7.
This is there.
How many does a mouse have?
7.
7. How many does a giraffe have?
7.
7. Once nature finds a pattern she likes, she sticks with it. So if you have 7 vertebrae, how do you have 8 pairs of spinal nerves? Because cervical 1 is coming out between the occiput and the bone C1, and cervical 2 is coming out between the bone C1 and the bone C2. And the rest of them are going to be coming out underneath until at cervical bone 7 has cervical nerve 8 coming out underneath it, right? Because C1, the atlas, has C1 above it and C2 below it, spinal nerve. So that's it. It's one of those N+1 problems because it comes out on both sides, and that's just the way they number that thing. The rest of them are consistent.
Gotcha.
So 5 pairs of lumbars, 5 pairs of sacral spinal nerves. When you're a baby, actually up until the age of about 15, the vertebrae, the sacral vertebrae are separate. In a baby, they're completely separate, and then as you're growing, they start to fuse, and the last fusion is about the age of 15. S1 fuses onto S2. Sometimes it never fuses, and people sort of think they have a 6th lumbar vertebrae, whereas it's actually S1 that has never fused. So let's see, and then you have 1 pair of coccygeal spinal nerves. No, so the sacral ones are S1 to S5, and the coccygeal one, well, C has already been used, so we're going to call this CO1. So that's the numbering system. Now, then we got the plexuses, and the plexus kind of looks like a railroad yard in that you have a bunch of tracks coming in, and then you got a lot of switches, and then you got a lot of tracks coming out the other way. And like this one here, this is the lumbosacral plexus. This is just a mess of different wiring. And you know, why bother going through this problem? Redundancy. There's an awful lot of redundancy in the nervous system. And remember I said if the lower motor neurons are damaged, that's the final common pathway, you've got a problem. But there is a way around the problem if you've got plexuses. Because let's say that, you know, what if S2 just went straight to a bunch of effectors? If S2 got knocked out by a disc problem, those muscles would be paralyzed. But the way it is, since it's going to a plexus, and there are a lot of other nerves going into this plexus, if you're talking about the tibial nerve over here, well, you've also got to leave from S3, from S2, from S1, from S3, S2, S1, L5, even a tiny little bit from L4. So what happens in real life, if you get an injury to any one of these discs, the brain figures it out. It's like, you know what, that cable's not working very well. We're going to send more traffic through this, and through this, and we're going to overcome that problem. So the body is really built with a lot of redundancy, extra circuitry to allow for damage. And this is why sometimes when people have problems, even if they don't go to the doctor, they start to feel better. They made some kind of a software upgrade to change the way the body works. And you know, sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't, but that's the deal. So the plexuses run as follows. The cervical plexus is made from your spinal nerves C1 to C4. Backwards. The spinal nerves, cervical 1 to cervical 4, feed into the cervical plexus, which is way up here. These guys. And this is really important because the breathing muscles are in here, and if they get messed up, you're in trouble. Your brachial plexus goes from C5 to T1, depending on the books you read. So cervical 5 to T1 is going to be these, these bad boys right here, and this is your brachial plexus right here. This one is really important for us as massage therapists because the brachial plexus gets caught between the scalenes, and that causes a lot of problems. Then you have an end to the plexus system. You don't have any plexuses in the thoracic region because you don't really need any. Very little goes wrong in this area, and the thoracic vertebrae are very, very stable, and they're protected by the ribs. And as the nerves come out, the nerves go straight along around the front, like this, and like this, and like this, and like this, and like this. So there's almost nothing that ever goes wrong with them. So T2 to T12, T2 to T12, they go straight out. And they're called the thoracic nerves. And since since nerves take care of whatever is in the neighborhood, what muscles do you think the thoracic nerves are going to serve? Well, it goes all the way around your rectus abdominis, but what about along the way? The intercostals, right, the muscles between the ribs. So the thoracic nerves are going to take care of the intercostals and rectus abdominis. This is why belly dancers can get independent control of all the different parts of the rectus, because they have independent nerve control coming from all these other things. And it's like anything else, it's a matter of practice. You practice enough and you can flip coins and all kinds of party tricks. Then the plexus system picks up again with L1 to L4. L1 to L4 is going to be the lumbar plexus. And then you've got L4 to S3. Is going to be the sacral plexus. There is a bit of an overlap here, right? L1 to L4 and L4 to S3, and that is right somewhere, right here. So if you take a look at this line, right over here. So L4 is, by the way, these are all the anterior rami, right? The posterior rami are not going to have anything to do with this. So the anterior rami are going to go in, but L4 then splits again, and part of it goes to the lumbar plexus up here, and part of it goes to the sacral plexus down there. So that's basically it in most people. So that's the plexus system, and then we got to know all the nerves that come out of these things, but some of them are more important than others. The cervical plexus is pretty easy. There's only one nerve you need to know, the phrenic nerve. So the cervical plexus, the terminal nerve that emerges from the cervical plexus is the phrenic nerve. And the phrenic nerve innervates diaphragm. The phrenic nerve innervates the diaphragm. Now, let's see. There's a strange thing. Just get into this for a second. Here. Now, the cervical plexus is in the neck. And in the notes, there are other things. There are segmental branches that are powering the other nerves in this area, but it's too much. We're just not going to worry about it. Phrenic is what you got to do. But the question is, why is the phrenic nerve up there? The diaphragm is not up there. But this is one of those leftovers from evolution. Originally, the diaphragm was there. So, if you think about a fish, the breathing apparatus in a fish are going to be here, right? The gills are located in this region here. All of your breathing stuff, that's where it started out a long, long time ago. And gills do work like lungs, they just work in the water. Because the deal is that what the fish are doing is they suck in water through their mouth and they shoot it out through their gills. And so the seawater has oxygen in it, and they're picking up the oxygen like we pick up the oxygen for the air. The thing is, though, that there's not as much oxygen in the water as there is in the air. So, but fish are cold-blooded. They basically draw a lot less calories and energy and things like that, so they can get away with it. But your dolphins and your porpoises and your whales, they're warm-blooded, and they can't breathe water. They have to breathe air. They've got lungs like us, and they've got the spout in the back. So anyway, that's where it started. But when fish started to go into amphibians, and amphibians, that's the thing with amphibians. Amphi means a little of this and a little of that. They're both, right? Frogs, tadpoles start in the water with gills, and then they develop lungs. They gotta have both at the same time, which is kind of weird for a while. They go through this metamorphosis. And so what's happening is, and evolutionarily what happens is, when you go through 9 months of gestation, but in 9 months you cover 3.5 billion years of evolution. You start as a single cell, right? The zygote, just like a bacteria. And then you grow into a multi-cell, and then you start to look like the fetus of a fish. And at that point, the fish come out. And then you keep on going, and you look like the fetus of a frog. And then the frogs come out. But you keep going, and after a while, you start to look like a chicken, basically. A chicken embryo and a human embryo look very much alike at one point, because chickens are dinosaurs, and that was the next layer. And then the chickens, modern-day dinosaurs, come out. And then if you keep on going, your fetus starts to look like a monkey, because that's the next stage, the primates. And then the monkeys come out. And then finally you reach the highest layer of evolution. You look like Elmer Fudd. And that is when the baby comes out, because all babies pretty much look like Elmer Fudd when they come out. Anyway, but the thing is, there's a lot of weird stuff. When you look like a fish fetus, all of your equipment is like a fish fetus, and all this stuff has to move around, and all kinds of crazy things happen. And one of the things that happens is the breathing apparatus has to move down, and the phrenic nerve has to follow it down. And so this is like one of those, upgrades that, well, we're going to patch this, we're going to move this over here, and that's why the phrenic nerve is coming out from there. By the way, some people are still born with gills. They're not functional gills, but they have these. You have some of the vestigial equipment, but most people doesn't show. But every once in a while it shows, and a baby is born with little non-functioning gills. It would be cool if they were functional, but they're not. And of course, this totally freaks out the parents. Now that's why the turtlenecks were so popular. But now the doctors just do a little surgery, and it's like, we're not going to talk about that. My friend Flicker. So anyway, that's what's going on there. Now
S5.
Oh, by the way, this is also there's a lot of stuff in our brain too. Not only do we have vestigial parts, like the fifth toe is probably vestigial, but we also have, let me see, should I go to neuro? We've got reflexes that are left over from different parts of our creation too. Let's see if this works on Windows Explorer. So the hiccup, where is the hiccup coming from? It doesn't seem to serve any purpose for us, but remember what fish would do when you're going from a fish to an amphibian is you're going to have to suck in a lot of water and you don't want it to go into your developing lungs. So what the frogs do is they go and they're drawing in the water, but they have a glottal stop. It doesn't go to the lungs, it goes past the gills, and that's how they're breathing in that their awkward puberty stage is they're part fish and part frogs. And so that little reflex is how they fixed that problem, and we inherited all the hardware from all the different fixes going back to the dawn of time. And some of them got reused for other things, but the hiccup is just sort of a joke now. It's actually left over. Yes, I want to proceed. Oh, don't give me this problem. See, this is why Windows Explorer kind of sucks. Not kind of, it sucks. Alright, we're going to switch over to Google. That's going to take time. Alright, in the meanwhile, we're going to talk about the brachial plexus. So, brachial plexus, remember that it's going to be coming from your C5 to T1. Those are the spinal nerves that are causing it. And let's see. So if you want to get a good look at the cervical plex, the brachial plexus, the place to go is in neuro, or any of them really. You go to that complete body atlas that I may have showed you at some point, but I'm going to show you now. If you click on this thing, complete body atlas, the first thing under the brain, you get this little sucker, which under Chrome will do something called downloading without trouble. And one of the nice things about this is so got our person and we strip her down to this, and then we do this. Not that much. Come on, up. And we spin you around, do-si-do. Now the thing about the brachial plexus, and the thing which is a lot of business for massage therapists, is the brachial plexus. Whoa, too much. Back off. There we go. So this is the brachial plexus right here. These are the nerves that are coming off that are going to be taking care of the shoulder girdle and the upper extremity. The mess of nerves here are the blood vessels. But the nice thing about the zygote body, thoracic vertebra, thank you very much. Nice thing about the zygote, so you click on something and tells you what it is. But if I bring her down a little bit, I go a little bit like, I don't know. And then you build the muscles, this thing on the right, you can build the muscles on top of it. There is your problem right there. Those are the anterior and the posterior scalenes. Remember those guys? They're going from the transverse processes down to the first rib and the second rib, and they're just like a scissor across the brachial plexus. And again, if we take it off, there they are, clear as day. And then you can wrap more muscles on top of it, of course. Eventually the traps will cover up the whole thing. But does anybody remember what the scalenes do? It's funny, you're all moving the exact opposite
Yeah.
direction. Forward.
It helps with
they're
flexion,
moving the head
right?
forward like this. Or I should say,
I
they're
had to,
moving the
I
head
had to
forward like
do it.
this. Everybody is getting shortened scalenes because of these phones and these devices. Just look on the subway at everybody in the fetal position doing this all the time, and it's painful to even watch them because what's happening is these muscles are getting tighter and tighter and tighter, and sooner or later they're going to have numbness and tingling going down the arms, and then they lose power in the arms because the final common pathway is being compressed, and that's going to bring them to us. So it's good to know your brachial plexus because a lot of people come to massage therapists for problems with the brachial plexus. So now it's kind of a matter of going through the, basically just marching down the nerves here and just doing them one at a time as they come out. So the first one is the axillary nerve. And the nerves are sort of named by a whole hodgepodge of different things. I'll explain it as we go. But you've got the axillary nerve. Now you want to think logically. The axillary nerve is going to go into the axilla. These are the terminal nerves that are coming out of the plexus and going on their way. And in the axillary region, you've got deltoid, and that's what it's going to do. The axillary nerve is going to do deltoid and teres minor. This one over here is the musculocutaneous nerve. The musculocutaneous nerve, which is a musculo because it's doing muscles and skin, but they all kind of do muscles and skin. But it's a very fancy name. It sounds like it was named by the British, and in fact it was. So you see musculocutaneous nerve, you want to start to think like the British. And when you think like the British, you think of the BBC. The BBC stands for biceps brachii, brachialis, and corporalis. So that's the BBC as it's going through your shoulder. Now, one of the things about this, what do these three muscles have in common besides the fact that they're innervated by the same nerve?
Flexors.
They're all flexors of the elbow, right? So if you have a problem with the brachial plexus, you might have a problem with elbow flexion because if that particular part of it is being, annoyed, that's going to be a problem. Now the next one is a great big nerve, the radial nerve. The radial nerve, anatomical position. Is the radial nerve going to be running lateral or medial?
Lateral.
Lateral, and that's the best way to remember this thing. You take your arm and then you run your hand down like this along the lateral side. You're hitting all the muscles that the radial nerve does. So we're talking triceps, we're talking anconeus, we're talking supinator, we're talking brachioradialis, we're talking the wrist extensors. That's what the radial nerve does. So triceps, anconeus, supinator, triceps, anconeus, supinator, brachioradialis, wrist extensors, all the wrist extensors, very neat that way. So, extensor carpi radialis, extensor carpi ulnaris, extensor carpi radialis longus, extensor carpi radialis brevis, extensor carpi ulnaris, extensor digitorum, all of those
Longus.
on the same nerve. So that's kind of convenient that way. And again, let's see, where have I got it? Have it? Yeah, there it is. Notice for the radial nerve, they're giving you a posterior view of this thing. Try it. Take your arm and then posterior aspect, and you're on, and think about the muscles as you go over them. Triceps, anconeus, supinator, brachioradialis, and the wrist extensors. All of those are going to be the radial nerve. Because you've got to remember which nerves are innervated by, which muscles are innervated by which nerves. And it's a lot. So anything you can do to make it easier is going to be it. So if you have a regional understanding of the anatomy, you're going to be in good shape. I'm running right along here. And the dermatome is going to be the same. The radial nerve is also going to be doing the skin over these muscles. So like if you have numbness and tingling over here, you got a radial nerve problem. The next one is the median nerve. The median nerve. Now, the median nerve and the ulnar nerve kind of split the front, and it's a little bit involved. So the ulnar nerve is obviously running on the ulnar side, and the median nerve is going to be running on here. So it's like all the flexors basically on the radial side are going to be the median nerve. So things like flexor carpi radialis is going to be what's going on over here. So median nerve, you've got flexor carpi ulnaris. You've got the pronators, both pronator teres and pronator quadratus. Flexor digitorum. Flexor pollicis. Which makes sense because the thumb is on the lateral side. Palmaris longus. Did I put the pronators? Yes, I did. And then it's going to be running to the thenar eminence. So it's a lot, but it does all run in a line. Remember, you got your thenar eminence over here, so you're just running right along here. Flexor carpi ulnaris, palmaris longus, both pronators, flexor digitorum, flexor hallucis, basically that whole line there. Now, a very important thing about the median nerve that you want to watch out for is carpal tunnel syndrome. Carpal tunnel syndrome is the #1 ailment of massage therapists. People get this problem, and it can knock you right out of your profession if you're not careful. Basically, the carpal tunnel is this thing right here. This is your carpal tunnel going down, and the median nerve goes right through here to get to the thumb, and then the flexor retinaculum comes on top of it. Remember the flexor retinaculum, those like the bracelets that go around here? So it's going through that little tunnel, and it's sharing the space with 9 tendons. And so that's a very crowded little space, and the tendons don't care, but the nerves are sensitive. They don't do well with pressure, right? So the problem is, and what you need to avoid is what your massage teachers have been telling you to avoid. Don't do this, right? Hyperextension when you're working is really, because that stretches the retinaculum and it's going to compress the wrist, and it really, it's one of a lot of these things. Once you get it, it's very difficult to get rid of it. So it's much easier not to get it in the first place. And the way to do that is to use your good body mechanics. You want a nice wide stance. You want to bend your knees. You want to keep your spine more or less straight up and down. You want your wrists to be straight. The lower you are, the less the necessity to do this kind of a thing. Right? You know, and I see students, and they've got their shoulders like this. Like I don't know. So you want to avoid that. Not only do you want to avoid it when you're doing massage, you want to avoid it the rest of the time. So don't lean on counters like this. Lean on them like this if you have to. It's like all the things you do with your wrist becomes important. If you're waiting tables and you've got a serving tray, this is a problem. And I've had students who waiting tables and going to massage school, and they could do one or the other, but when they were doing both, they started to get this problem. So I don't know. You have to work with the client. One guy, student, who's very tall, big guy, and he was strong enough that he could hold the serving tray like this instead of like that, which took the strain, and that worked, you know. Now of course that's not gonna work for everybody, but he was a big guy and he was able to get away with this kind of thing. He was able to retrain himself to do that. I mean, doing it with the non-dominant hand, I don't know about that, because serving trays can go flying. But you know, when you got your clients and when they've got a problem, unless it's from a car crash, it's probably from something they're doing, the way they're sitting, the way they're standing, the way they're playing with their iPhones, the way they are always carrying your, can I borrow that bag?
Go right ahead.
So,
It should be empty. Well, not already.
most people carry on the same side all the time, and they usually carry on the non-dominant side, because the dominant side is free for doors and smacking people, giving them the finger, whatever you have to do, right? So the thing is, everybody gets in the habit. I mean, it's got two straps, but most people only use one, right? You'll see this on the street on the way home. People go like this. And the thing is, if you do this all the time, it tends to rise up. This shoulder comes up just a little bit so the bag doesn't slide off. And you're doing that for 20 years, you take the bag off, it stays like that. And that's one of the other things that people don't get. It was never a problem before, but over time it becomes a problem, and they will not associate the activity with the problem because it hasn't been a problem until now. And then they come to you with all kinds of problems, and they're looking at you like this, and I don't understand, my left shoulder hurts, what's the problem? And they get so used to it, even looking in the mirror, they do not see that it's not symmetrical anymore. And then you have to do this kind of thing, and then, you know, can you lower your shoulder? Well, of course I can. You know, and so, anyway, and again, it's, people really don't understand how the body works, and patient education is half of our job. So you really want to get used to that kind of thing, and yeah, you really want to use your body symmetrically. So that's, and you know, if carpal tunnel gets bad enough, you're going to get flaccid paralysis, right? If the final common pathway is compressed, it won't innervate the muscles will atrophy, and this thenar eminence can be as flat as a pancake, and I've seen that on people where it's like normal on one side and flat on the other because they've got carpal tunnel on one side, and it really hurts. It's very, I know, oh my God. No, you're probably, well, you know, mine are not symmetrical. My right hand has more development because I'm right-handed, and that's just the way it is. And this is me, who's been very, very careful to be symmetrical about things. Even me, the right hand is, you know, the whole right side of the body is heavier. Because if you're right-handed, you're right-footed. Every step you take, you land more powerfully on the dominant side and you push off more powerfully. And if you're involved in a one-sided sport like shot putting, javelin throwing, even tennis, you see these athletes, the dominant side is much more developed. You know, when they're 22, it doesn't matter. But when they're 42, they're going to be like this as they're walking along, and they don't realize, you know, that it can be a problem. So if you have an old pair of shoes, take a look at your shoes. They're going to be more worn on one side. This appears at that. Let's have a look.
I'm trying to see.
Let's see. Yep, right. I don't know if you can see it, but the right heel strike is stronger than the left heel. This is the right shoe right here. It's a little bit more. And that can lead to things like arthritis when you're old, if you're not careful. So.
What about torn TFC?
TFC, what's that?
It's fibrocartilage in between the carpals.
Oh.
So it's a tear that I have.
Fibrocartilage between the carpals.
High grade tear.
You did what?
It's a high grade tear.
It depends.
It has poor blood supply. It takes forever to heal. Eventually.
Well, fibrocartilage does, because cartilage is avascular, and see, cartilage is a vascular tissue has a blood supply. It heals quicker because the cells have more resources to make more matrix. Cartilage has a heavy, dense matrix, and it's avascular. So the cells that are repairing your cartilage have to get their nutrition through this heavy, dense matrix, as diffusion is very slow. Cartilage does heal, but it heals very slowly. So what you have to do is you have to baby it, basically. You have to be nice to it like for a long time. The problem that happens, and clinically what a doctor sees is the cartilage doesn't heal. And for years we thought that cartilage didn't heal because it heals so slowly. The amount of damage is the amount of degeneration is faster than the amount of regeneration. So what you have to do is protect it so the degeneration is not so great and the cartilage can repair itself. The question is, how'd you get it in the first place? Was it repetitive motion or trauma?
Repetitive motion.
That's a problem because that's what you have to stop.
Yeah, that's my job, so.
Okay. Talk to me after class. We gotta brainstorm on that one. See, if it's a traumatic accident, that's easy. Just don't get into any more car crashes. You know, the body will heal itself. But if the problem was caused by something you're doing all the time, like carrying the bag on one side or your job, that gets tricky. So that's the median nerve. The ulnar nerve, now the ulnar nerve runs down the ulnar side naturally, and the ulnar nerve is going to be concerned with ulnar nerve. Ulnar. The ulnar nerve is going to be the flexors too, but it's going to be the flexors on the ulnar side. And so it's going to be flexor digitorum, profundus, flexor digitorum profundus, parts of it, flexor carpi ulnaris, that's a no-brainer.
And then here.
And then you're going to go into the hypothenar eminence. So all these muscles in the hypothenar eminence, like flexor digiti minimi. Question? No. Flexor digiti minimi. I'll just say hypothenar eminence. All those guys in the hypothenar eminence. Also the lumbricals. I don't know if you remember the lumbricals. Those are intrinsic hand muscles. They're located in the hand, and they're going to allow for this. We call this the prehensile grip. Okay, so when you're handling a pen or a scalpel or something like that. The other grip is the bar grip, right? That's, you know, hanging from a tree, but this one is, you know, sophisticated. Extension of the fingers while you have flexion of the metacarpophalangeals. The interossei. And adductor pollicis. Adductor pollicis, which is coming right across adductor pollicis. Now then, there's a whole long list of all the other muscles that are here, which it's just too much. I mean, we've got all these nerves, and your brains are on overload as it is. But basically, just so you know, the brachial plexus does pretty much the whole shoulder girdle and the whole upper extremity. So all of those muscles that you know attached there, there's some nerve coming out of the brachial plexus that's going to take care of it. So brachial plexus is going to be the whole shoulder girdle and the whole upper extremity. And what you want to know about the brachial plexus in general is that people have lots of problems with this. It's called brachial neuralgia. Pain somewhere along the line in the brachial plexus, and a lot of times that pain is going to be caused by something going on with the scalenes or something like that. So now algia means pain, and so in pathology next semester we're going to be doing lots and lots of algia. So the word makes sense. Pain in the nerves for the shoulder and arm. There is another name for it, unfortunately, thoracic outlet syndrome. TOS, thoracic outlet syndrome. Thoracic outlet. Basically, this right here is the thoracic outlet, where the nerves come underneath the clavicle. That is the outlet to get into this area here. Let me make this a little bit smaller. That's the outlet to get down here, and you have numbness and tingling going on here. But there are a number of different things that can cause you problems here. So, and the end result, though, is going to be like numbness and tingling going down the arm, weakness in the muscles, that kind of thing. And a lot of it is going to be from this. Anything that causes a shoulder, an anterior head posture is going to be, and that's the #1 reason these days. It's coming from anterior head posture. But you also have it from almost anything that is moving the head in an unusual way. So you could get this from sleeping position. You can get this from musical instruments. I've got a lot of musicians over the years. You get violin, for example, or flute, or any of these things, even pianists. Because pianists, everything with the piano is down. And I was working on this little tiny person. She was 5'0", maybe in high heels. But she's like, she's a virtuoso, she's a professor at Juilliard, and she's getting brachial neuralgia because there's so much downward pressure that the clavicle is coming down. It really was an outlet problem. The clavicle is coming down on the first rib, is the problem in her case, and that's pinching this area here. And yeah, there's not that much space for a lot of people. So the thing to fix that is you've got to bring this whole area up. And so that means you have to figure out a way to work your upper traps, right? Because the upper traps but she can't grip anything because if she's gripping something, that's bad for the piano. So she can't do weights. So we worked out this thing, the weighted bands, like 5 pounds. Mm-hmm. So we got those, and she can't have it on her wrist either because that's so it's when you're working with these very high performance athletes and musicians, it's really kind of interesting. So we finally figured it out. We got 5-pound weights on her biceps, which gives her enough weight that way if she's just going like this, it's developing the upper traps, and that tiny little bit of raise to the clavicle just got it out of trouble, and she was able to continue. So that's the sort of thing you want. So the piano can do it. Holding your shoulder bag, with one arm. If they come to you, again, you always want to think about this. If it's not a car crash or falling down the stairs, it's something in their daily activity, and they won't know what it is, probably. I mean, if it's an athlete, they might, they're like, because they're pretty much, into their bodies, they live in their mind. So that's the thing for that one. And let me just see if there's, I just want to check about the, we're going to take a 10-minute break for sanity and come back and do a little more.